Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I can read it now. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. I'm very excited to have you here. Thank you for joining our webinar. Let me introduce myself. My name is Selobekova Dilafruz, and I'm a head of methodology department in EduStream. EduStream is an international educational center, which is an official and exclusive representative of Express Publishing in Kazakhstan. Today, after the webinar, please don't leave. I'm going to run a contest, and we have some special gifts from our partners, Express Publishing and EduStream. That's why stay here. Please write down my number. Can you see it on the screen? Can you see my number? You will need it a bit later. Is it visible? Okay. Please put down it somewhere. Okay, great. Today, we have an amazing guest, our special speaker, Steve Ливер. Steve is not only a talented teacher and senior ELT consultant, but also an international teacher trainer who delivered workshops and seminars around the world. He has been a plenary speaker at many international conferences and been involved in various projects with organizations like British Council and Ministries of Education in various countries. Please welcome, let's welcome Steve. Let's wait for a moment. I guess Steve is joining us. Steve, are you here? Okay, people are still writing which universities they represent. We do sometimes have some kind of technical difficulties. That's why take your time. Let's wait for a while.
Hello there.
Oh, Steve. Hi, how are you?
Okay. I think I may now be online. So hello, everybody. If you could, would you mind just indicating in the chat box if you can hear me okay? And if you can see me okay?
Steve, we can hear you,
would you mind just doing that?
We cannot see you properly.
Can I be heard and seen?
Steve, can you hear me?
Hello, hello, see part of me. Welcome to the wonderful world of doing online seminars. Thank you very much for confirming that you can see me and hear me. It's always a relief, especially as this is a new platform for me, and I'm a little bit unsure. I've tried it out, but I'm a little bit unsure how it all works, and I think that very much sums up how we all kind of feel these days with handling technology. Great that so many of you have joined us today, and I thank you very much for giving us your time. It is a busy and difficult time for everybody, I know, and so we're very grateful for you joining us today. What I wanted to do today is kind of manifold, in that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the feedback we've been getting over the last few months regarding teachers and their difficulties they've been facing. Now, I've been told you cannot see me properly. What is the problem? Because according to what I can see, I seem to be okay. What is it about me that you cannot see? If you could send me a message regarding what about me you cannot see, that would be very, very cool, guys. I'm half seen. Which half of me is seen? Just 1 second, guys. We have a small technical hitch. I'm being told not in the center. Okay, so what if I go that way? How about that? Okay, left from us. This is all very confusing. My left side is visible, so this side is visible. That's very, very weird. Because 1 second, I know what the problem is. I know what the problem is. There we go. Give me 1 second. Now, hopefully, no, you can't see me at all. Okay, give me a second. Hello, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. So we can see only your nose and half of your eyes. And you are somewhere in the corner.
Let me just try doing this.
To the direction of your mug. Or
no,
cup,
it's, I
what
have
is that?
2 cameras operating, and this is, I think, the problem. So let me just try this one. What's it like now?
A bit better.
Because from what I can see, from what you're getting, it's absolutely perfect. This is my problem. So yeah. Where should I move? If I move this way, yes. Is that good?
This way, right?
Oh, it's
excellent.
Is that okay?
A bit far, yeah, will be better. We'll see your foot
further.
And hair.
How are we doing now?
Okay, now much better.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm working with 2 cameras and it seems to have picked up the wrong camera. That's my problem right now. Let me see if I can do anything about that in the settings. Okay, so it's okay. Anyway, what's going to happen is that during the presentation, you are going to be, I'm going to be using my PowerPoint, so I don't think there's going to be a massive problem with the camera. As long as you guys can hear me, that is going to be just fine, okay? And I think some people are now hearing the music in the background. Okay, let's get down to business, and I'm going to share my screen, which is the kind of next challenge of the day. So let me start sharing my screen. EduStream is still sharing their slides.
Oh, sorry.
So if EduStream, you could stop sharing your slides, guys, then we'll be fine. For some reason, EduStream, guys, could you stop sharing your slides for us?
Is it better now?
Okay, let me just try that again. Okay, so we're going to try that and that.
Does it work?
And EduStream, apparently you're using the whiteboard. So if you could stop doing that, that would be cool too. I'm sorry about this, guys. We seem to be having some technical issues here, and we'll solve those in just a second. Anyway, let me try doing that again. Now, EduStream, guys, you're still blocking me. Let me try this again. I'm sorry, right now we seem to be having issues with EduStream, and there seem to be still some slides. I see that EduStream has gone offline, so let me just try this again. It all worked wonderfully well the other day when we did our test, and now, because we're in front of people, now EduStream, I can't share my screen, so that's going to be a bit of an issue. For some reason, you are doing something that the machine doesn't like. Anyway, while we're figuring out those problems, and hopefully the guys at EduStream can hear me, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about where we are right now. While we've got the chat going, if you could just put in the box, what are some of the biggest problems that you have been facing, ladies and gentlemen, as you have been kind of forced into more teaching online, into virtual classrooms and everything else? Could you just write in the chat box, and many of you are still saying hello and hello to you, could you write in the chat box things that are worrying you at the moment? Okay, what difficulties are you facing as you go? EduStream, I've still got you using a whiteboard. Okay, let me just message EduStream because I'm not sure what is going on there. Internet connection. You're having problems with internet connection. Evaluating students. Excellent. This is a thing that we'll be talking about and thinking about. And I am still trying to share my screen. Okay. What we found, go on. Bad internet connection. Classroom management issues. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm trying to use the message function. Can't seem to do that either. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And it won't let me do anything. Okay, this is going to be an issue, and I'm hoping that someone can actually fix it for us so that I can share the screen. Yeah, EduStream, I can still seeing you using the whiteboard. If you could stop using the whiteboard, that would be great. And just kind of click out of that. That would be wonderful. We got used to this way of teaching. This is a very important point. Sorry, guys, we've had a lot of technical things going on right now. And I have a whole bunch of things I want to talk to you about when I can finally get round to showing you my slides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start talking through my presentation, and when we get the chance and we have this problem sorted out with the whiteboard, then I will get back to it. But teachers need to be creative, so that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay. One of the things that we certainly found when we were, as a company, Express Publishing obviously has digital products, etc. And one of the things that we found was that there was a massive increase in the number of teachers actually using digital products when this whole virus started. Ah, there we go. I think my screen is now shared. Thank you very much for whoever did that. I much appreciate it. Okay, can everyone now see the PowerPoint?
I'm sorry, Steve, I shared the screen. Is it fine if you just tell me when to move?
Could you just confirm if you can see the PowerPoint for me? That would be cool. Okay, and I just have to work out now how to change my PowerPoint slides, which is not easy. Give me a second. This is a nightmare. Yeah, great. My only problem is, there we go. I just
Steve, I think, can you hear me, Steve?
Okay, if I could go on to the next slide, please. Whoever's controlling the slides, I would go on to the next. Thank you very much. We're going to do it that way. Okay. Sorry about this, guys. This is just one of those things. As I said, it's a new platform for me. So one of the things that we discovered was that a lot of people were coming online for the very first time and using tools and techniques that they had never used before. And I was wondering, if I look this way, maybe I'm looking into the correct camera. It's all very, very confusing. There we go. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, what new technology have you started using since you've been forced into online learning? Any programs, any techniques that you've started using? Could you just list the things that you have kind of discovered as time has gone on? Which new techniques have you discovered, ladies and gentlemen, in your online teaching? Now that we've got my PowerPoint sorted out, we're in full speed here and we'll be fine. And I do apologize for those technical hitches at the beginning. So what techniques have you discovered? What have you learned about yourselves during this time when we've all been forced into using new technologies, etc.? Could you list those in the chat for me? Any programs that you've come across, any techniques that you found? You've all gone silent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm just going to roll down my chat here. There we go. Brilliant. Google Meet. Oh, there's so many of you. It's going so quickly. Google Forms. Excellent. PowerPoint presentations. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm just looking down and following the chat here, guys. Padlet. Yeah, I think they've started charging for that now. It got quite expensive. Google Class, Jamboard. Jamboard's a really good one. Yep. Okay. Moodle. So many wonderful ones. Okay. Forgive me, you're scrolling through really quickly here. Okay. Google Form, PowerPoint. Excellent. Now, this was something that many people faced. And what we kind of discovered is that there was basically, from the communication we had with teachers, what we basically discovered is that there are two types of approaches, if you like, to this current situation. One of them being the kind of one of approach is just looking at it as a whole set of problems and looking at it as something that has gone terribly wrong and that we complain about. And there are many teachers around the world, we've discovered from my personal experience, who have decided to look at this as an opportunity as well. Admittedly, when all of us first went into lockdown, whenever that was, and to whatever degree that was, a lot of people were suddenly, like literally from one day to the next, having to discover new technologies and new ways of doing things. And I'll be honest, in many countries that I've talked to, they had to do this without any particular training. And this was a major problem. Now that we've had some time, and for all of us, it's been far too long. Now that we've had some time, what has turned out is that a lot of people are now discovering new ideas and new techniques that they're using that they're really having a lot of fun with. So what I wanted to do was to focus, if you like, on the opportunities that people have come across rather than the problems. And as we go through, I'll be asking you questions as well there too, okay? I can still see the chat, so if there are any questions that come up, please feel free to put them there. If there are any suggestions that you'd like to make, please put them in there again. Please, however, bear with me because I'm trying to look at you guys. I'm trying to stay in the right part of the screen, and I'm also trying to follow the chat here too, okay? So what I don't know is how to change the slides. I don't think I'm controlling that. So if we could have the next slide, please, that would be great. Whoever's following me here, thank you very much. Excellent. So what we did is we did a SWOT analysis of the whole situation. And we looked at, SWOT analysis, those of you who do business will know that a SWOT analysis is about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, okay? And just want to talk a little bit about those from the perspective of a group. I work with a group of people who have really quite a global view of the situation and what's going on, and share some things with you there and see how that matches with your experience. It may or it may not. And we'll go through them one by one now. If I could have the next slide, please, that would be cool. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for helping me out with this. I do appreciate it. As I said, this wasn't a problem when I did the test earlier this week. So some of the strengths that people have found, and again, this may or may not be your experience. So we're just going on the kind of the general trends that we've come across as we've been working on this. Certainly, there has been increased flexibility. In a lot of cases, people have found that working online has shifted the timetable around a bit. In some countries, certainly they had smaller class sizes. Their timetable was spread out more across the day. And we have found that to be a case. That may or may not be your situation. I fully agree. I'm just trying to give you a global, if you like, overview. Certainly presents different opportunities for collaboration and creativity. And this is what a lot of teachers have found, and many of the things that you gave, that you have mentioned in the chat. Certainly those have been things that a lot of people have discovered, and the truth is there are a lot of free resources out there that many of my colleagues that I converse with a lot have used some of them for the first time, and now they're kind of loving it. Audiovisual components can be effectively combined. I think this is a really important one. I do know, because I travel around a lot, and obviously I've visited you guys on occasion before and thoroughly enjoyed it, that many classrooms differ. Some classrooms in some schools have a lot of equipment, of course universities as well. Some don't have quite so many. And what we have found is that now, for example, those teachers who've been teaching in classrooms where there wasn't a huge amount of equipment available have suddenly found that because they're working online, for example, it's much, much easier for them to bring in technology, because now they can do it from the PC. They don't have to have a projector. They don't have to have a special board or a special screen. Everything they can do pretty much has done on the PC, if it's working properly. And I understand what many of you have been saying about internet connections as well. So we have found that there has been some teachers who've not really experimented with using audiovisual material before have suddenly started using it and really started enjoying it. I saw some of you mention in the scroll, in the chat, some of you mentioned that you had started looking at things like TEDx talks, many of which are available on YouTube, and many of which are absolutely fascinating. In fact, there are some wonderful ones on language there as well. There's one I use quite often when I'm looking at vocabulary. There's a lovely talk by a lady who's a lexicographer talking about how dictionaries are made and how new words come into being, etc., to a group of teenagers. It's a wonderful, wonderful talk on TEDx. And then we've got synchronous learning is as interactive as physical classroom. If we handle distance learning effectively, let's remember that it's live. I mean, you saw how live we were today with the slight technical problem we had at the beginning. That these things happen, but we are live, and I'm communicating with you guys right now. And in the same way that teachers can communicate with students, there is that communication still perfectly possible within this virtual environment, and it's not something we should forget or not something we should avoid. Very important one we'll be coming back to. Asynchronous learning provides better conditions for students to learn at their own space and pace. And what that basically means is that if we handle this correctly, and I will be coming to this with some practical tips that we've gained from our experience, is that if we use the correct techniques, there is the possibility now for more students to work at their own pace. In other words, a lot more emphasis is being put on student autonomy, students working on their own, and that means they don't have, and you don't have, the time pressure that one might have in the classroom, so that students who take a little bit longer to do things are finding that they now have the time to do that, and students who can work quite quickly are not kind of being made to wait for other students to come up, to catch up with them. So what you have here is an interesting experiment, if you like, or an interesting experience in differentiated learning. And of course, with the tools available to students outside the classroom with access to the internet, there are also tools that can help them with what they need help with. And I know not all those tools are popular. and I know not everybody likes them, but the truth of the matter is, things like Google Translate, for example, the truth of the matter is those things are there. I'm not in the center. Guys, I really don't know how to be in the center. I don't know what the thing is doing to my camera. Please, if you could just focus on the slides, listen to the sound of my voice. You don't really need to see this. It's not the most important part of the day. As long as you guys can hear me and you can see my slides, that's really all I care about right now. Although I did, try to make myself look nice. So if you have students using tools like Google Translate, the truth of the matter is they really do exist. They are out there. And one of the things I do think that we have to be careful of when we're thinking about online learning and digital tools is they do allow other learning opportunities. And, what we need our learners to do is to learn to use them properly, not ignore their existence. For example, with Google Translate, learning how to use it effectively is a perfectly valid tool. For example, learning not always to go for the first translation, learning to double check, learning to find the translation and then maybe double check if it's a single word, for example, or a phrase, that if you Google that, it comes back with the same meaning that you would expect it to have. I work as a translator. A work I enjoy very much indeed. I use Google Translate to find synonyms. If I'm not happy with the translation that I know, I use it just to double check my memory. All of these things are valid tools. We're not going to stop them using them, so we can at least teach them to use them properly. And it does help our learners who are weaker. It's a shame for them to get a low mark because they couldn't remember a word, when in real life, they would be on their mobile phones and finding it in 3 seconds. Okay, so let's be realistic, I think, about the use of online tools when learners are working on their own. Classroom management, what we have found as well, and this is an interesting one, that when learners aren't physically next to each other, when learners are not able to whisper to each other or nudge each other or all of those things that kids can do in a classroom, it is actually easier to control them. Many learners, especially younger learners in our experience, are online, and there is a parent or somebody kind of in the background somewhere monitoring their behavior. So issues that may have come up in the classroom don't necessarily come up quite so much in the virtual environment. Again, nothing is 100%, but it is something that we've heard about from colleagues we've talked to about this. Okay, next slide, please, my invisible and wonderful helper, and thank you so much for that. Weaknesses, there is a lot of self-discipline required. Learners do have to organize their time. They have to, it's hard, we're all like that. Those of us who are stuck at home, when you don't have a rigid timetable quite so much, it's very easy to kind of put things off for a little bit later on. And that can be a problem, but let's face it, time management is something that we all have to learn, and we're all still learning to a large extent. And no voice, oh dear. I'm sorry, but everyone can hear me so far, so I'm hopeful that that is a local problem. Technology can be frustrating, as I think we're experiencing a little bit today, but that's really only, thank you very much, EduStream, for confirming. You guys are great. Thank you so much for being there. I'm just going to get rid of that message. Okay, thank you so much. Technology can be frustrating. Internet connections can be frustrating. But at the end of the day, that's not a problem, if you like. It's not a pedagogical problem. And it's not a problem of the tools that we're trying to use. This is something that desperately needs to be looked at in many, many countries. You guys are not alone in making that connection in making that comment about the internet connection. Unfortunately, that is something that is beyond my control, but it is certainly something that needs looking into, and not just for education, of course, but for people who are working from home, like me right now. A good internet connection is certainly something that people should be pushing for. And I would argue as well that there needs to be possibly looking at prices of that. If it's having to be used for education purposes, that is something that needs to be discussed, but I'm afraid that is not for me to sort out for you. A certain amount of equipment is necessary. Certainly some kind of PC with a webcam or Mac or whatever, with a webcam and audio. That's also important as well. But again, it doesn't have to be terribly expensive. It really doesn't. And I think that is something that we automatically assume. Many of the apps that you guys mentioned earlier on certainly can be used with a tablet. I have colleagues who attend Skype meetings. We have regular Skype meetings. At the moment, all of my colleagues and I are working from home. We have Skype meetings. People do it from their phones, from the tablet, and you know what? It's really quite cool. It works. So it doesn't need major investment. Okay, so please don't run away with that idea. Teachers do need to be a bit tech savvy. We do need to learn how things work, but I'm guessing that by now, most of you, the apps and equipment that you're using regularly, you're much more comfortable with. Do always remember, this is a very important tip, if you can't make something work, Google it or go to YouTube. There are always a lot of tutorials on things like Google. You can find on Google or YouTube to get things working. Face-to-face interaction, okay, it's a little more difficult. That's absolutely the case. Certainly watching body language is a bit of a problem. Okay, that is something that is a weakness there. You can't necessarily see the whole of your student's attitude, usually just the face, if that. So we accept that is a problem. The autonomy in learning can generate gaps. Certainly if what the teacher does is merely set homework, then come back online and check it, I do think there's a danger of that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. You might need more than one platform to meet your needs. That's absolutely true as well. Thankfully, a lot of providers have provided during this time free platforms, but certainly, yeah, if you're, sorry, someone's asking a question. If you want to make comments, please just write them in the chat. We've got a wonderful number of 365 people in the room. You can understand if everybody opened the microphones, that would be horrendous. Anything, please just write whatever you have in the chat. I can see it down the left-hand side here, and I promise you I'm keeping my eye on it, okay? Certainly, as I was saying, if teachers kind of just set homework continually, they come back, they mark the homework, they go away again, there is a loss of connection. And that is going to happen there. There are ways around it, and we'll be talking about them. I'm sorry, I'm going back again because I was distracted. And finally, assessing students through tests might be complicated. That is an issue. I do know one colleague, a very dear colleague and friend, what she does when students are writing tests is that she has them have their camera on at the time they're writing the test. Also, I suppose getting parents involved there might be an issue, a good idea as well. But I accept, unless there's a special platform for writing tests, it is one of the issues. And maybe we should be thinking about other kinds of investment. But certainly that is something that still needs to be looked into, and I'm not going to lie about it. It is a bit of an issue still. But certainly things like continual assessment, looking at students' homework, looking at the way they talk on camera, this kind of thing can still be done. EduStream guys, and I'm sorry, I don't know who's actually handling it. If you could please go to the next slide, that would be wonderful. Thank you very, very much indeed. Opportunities, less in-classroom time creates opportunities for more classes. I do know that in many countries, they've actually shortened the contact time because doing a class webinar for 45 minutes, 50, whatever the academic hour happens to be, it can be a little tiresome. Certainly, I find that doing this, doing webinars can be actually quite exhausting as well. It's a lot of concentration. There's a lot going on, a lot of distractions, so that can be an issue. Those working at lower levels might be interested in using gamified experience. This is something we look at on our platform. We do have the opportunity to gamify. So for those of you who are not familiar with gamification, if you think Harry Potter, if you think Slytherin, Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, so on and so forth, If you divide kind of learners into teams, you can make activities count for kind of scores, and then your learners are in a kind of what's what I'm looking for, in friendly competition with each other, and that can be done online. We do have that option, for example, on our platform. And if you're working in the private sector, there is always the potential for development of new services. Maybe you offer extra private coaching, for example. If learners are weak, maybe it's easier to have a bit of a head-to-head. And this can happen, of course, in the public school sector as well, that you can maybe have a little extra time if your lessons are shorter with some of your students who are facing difficulties, and just see them for a few minutes kind of individually online as well. Okay, next slide, please, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. There is resistance. Not everybody likes change. Not everyone finds it easy. And certainly the way that we were kind of forced into the changes that we had to make, I think that created a lot of resistance, partially just because of shock. That from one day to the next, in many cases, people were going from an environment in which they were very comfortable to an environment that they found threatening, frightening, not as productive, etc. I do think over time that's changed. But certainly there was that in the beginning, and possibly that's still going on as well. Inefficient guidance, certainly inefficient or lack of generally. Certainly where I live, teachers had the complaint that they were asked to kind of go into this new environment without any kind of guidelines. And a lot of governments around the world, I'm not speaking about yours, I don't know the details. I'm just giving you a kind of general feedback. A lot of teachers really were left to kind of work it out on their own. This is understandable considering the suddenness of the change. Slowly, kind of governments got involved and started providing government-approved platforms, etc. But still, I think is Vivia's assisting me. Thank you so much. Nice to know who it is. It's great that slowly this has started to happen, and I think a lot of governments are now looking at how they can incorporate lessons learned into further strategies, especially in areas where populations are widespread, etc. So certainly that was initially a threat. Hopefully a lot of people are catching up, but I do think a lot of weight fell onto teachers, and not all teachers were as willing as others to kind of jump on the technology bandwagon. E-learning can be more costly. Certainly this is an issue for families if they have a lot of kids and they're all trying to use one computer. They maybe have to try and get some other kind of either PC or tablet in the family. That certainly is an issue. If you've got 3 kids at home, not everybody has a PC each, and that certainly can be an issue. Over here where I live, one of the things they did is the distance learning for kind of, if you like, secondary level takes place in the morning, primary level takes place in the afternoon, so that they are trying as best they can to kind of divide up those times so that kids have access. Also, parents may be working at home as well, and that means that they also would require the PC. So there are problems with that. And as I said, there are some platforms which give a certain amount of things for free. And then if you want to use more, you have to pay for them. So there may be that cost there as well. Next slide, please. Thank you, Julia. Okay. Really has been a wake-up call. This is the end of the kind of the background I wanted to give you, and then we're going to go into a little bit more practicalities. What I have found to be very encouraging, and this is personal experience, because I have a number of teachers with whom I'm in groups on things like WhatsApp and on Facebook groups. And what I have found is that there is a huge amount of sharing going on. That teachers are sharing ideas about apps that they've used, techniques that they've used, they're helping their colleagues out. And I think that's a wonderful thing that I've seen happening here, and not just one instance, that there has been a lot of sharing. And teachers who are more comfortable are helping teachers out. Those who didn't use it, there was resistance at first, but now they're handling it. And there are still some who are not happy with it, who resist it, who use the bare minimum because they're not happy with it or they don't think it's educationally sound. But I'll be honest with you, at least from my experience, those people are the minority. Next slide, please, Delia. What I wanted to show you here, just to give you some background on this, to see how the shift has happened. We have a platform, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that later on. But I asked my colleagues in the administration, the platform administration department, to send me some statistics, and these are till, if I remember, till the end of October. If you look at the statistics in front of you, what you will see is that you have the kind of yellowy orange. The registrations, March to June 2020, you've got there, and you've got massive increases in registrations. Well, just look at the blue, basically. So the kind of the yellowy one is, let me get, sorry, I haven't got my glasses on, there we go. If you've got massive increases coming in, you can see it, I'm sorry, I can't read it. You've got massive increases coming in the recent period. So looking at March through to the end of October, we had a massive increase in registrations. I think the next slide will show it better, and I'll probably be able to read it better because it's a bit unclear on my screen. If you have a look here then, if you look at the dates at the bottom, and you can see the spike right there, we had a slight drop in August towards the right of the graphic, if you can see that. You can see there you've got a kind of drop going because in Europe, certainly, summer holidays came in. But look at that spike coming up to the end of October. And look at the period from August 2017 onwards. Very slight increases going on. And then suddenly in February of this year, which is when most of the schools we work with kind of went into lockdown, you can see that massive spike going on there, which, as I said, drops off for the summer holidays. And then you've suddenly got this massive spike when everyone came back to school and realized it really was time to get on with the learning. Those are very indicative of experiences. Obviously, I'm taking the data from our platform, but if you extrapolate that to the use of digital equipment, I think you'll find that it really does reflect the experience around the world, kind of just doing whatever we could up to the summer holiday, taking the summer period to kind of reassess, and then coming back for the new year, the new school year, determined to make use of some of the things that we've learned after we had that little break. So I just wanted to share that with you. As I said, this is entirely from our own statistics, but it does kind of back up some of the things I've been mentioning anecdotally. Next slide, please. So let's think about some of the practicalities involved in what is going on. Okay, so let us go to the next slide, because that's just there we go. Let's just remember some things about this. When we teach online, many of the qualities that we need online are the same qualities that we need in the classroom. It's not 100% change. It's not all gone out the window. Not everything we knew is no longer relevant, okay? The same teaching qualities will be needed when you become an online teacher, when you're using these kinds of things. For example, your ability to communicate, your ability to listen, your ability to lesson plan. All of these things that you've been using in your teaching, whatever level you teach, these are still equally valid now. Being able to be a little bit creative, to think of things in a slightly different way, to come up with solutions. This isn't new. Teachers have been doing it for generations, before we even had the internet. Trying to keep lessons student-centered. This is something we've been, for years, encouraged to do in the classroom, and this is something that we're still going to need to do online. I would argue, and I've already tried to argue, that in some ways, teaching online has allowed us to become a little bit more student-centered, but more of that later. Being resourceful. I know teachers, I've been working with them for 20 years. Teachers are incredibly resourceful. I have been privileged to go to, in my life, not mentioning countries, and don't think I'm talking about you guys here. I've been privileged to go to some very, very, very ill-equipped schools with not much money in the bank to buy equipment, etc. And I have seen teachers do amazing lessons. I have seen their dedication, and I've seen their love for their students, and I've seen the affection the students have for their teacher. And that is something that I always carry with me. And that is equally valid now, that resourcefulness, that dedication hasn't gone away. It's being channeled into slightly different directions, but it is still there. Being well prepared doesn't change. And as I mentioned already, being a good communicator and facilitator. And I think that word facilitator is very key when we think about the practicalities of the situation in which we now found ourselves. But just stay there. It's okay. Don't worry about it. The idea being that facilitators now, because a lot of what goes on is not necessarily something we can see, that what happens is now that our learners are having to do more on their own, and therefore the teacher is becoming more of a facilitator, suggesting ways that they can do things, helping them find information, guiding them towards new apps. All of these things are things that teachers do or should be doing instinctively. We did it in one way when we were in the classroom. We just do it a different way now that we're online. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. If we could go to the next one, that would be brilliant. Super duper duper. Lots of different ways of doing things. Certainly, we have found that there is increased call for LMS, learning management systems, excuse me. So used to saying language for L. Learning management systems. We, and I'm presuming a number of other bodies, have found that there has been increased interest in LMS. Generally, what LMS does, it allows you to manage a lot of things at a distance online. And I'll show you some examples of that just a little bit later, of how the LMS can help you when you're learning at a distance. But generally speaking, learning management systems allow kind of tracking marks, checking homework, school organization to be done in an online environment. Things like interactive whiteboard software. This is one of the things I was mentioning early on, ladies and gentlemen. The idea of being able to use a tool online that maybe we couldn't use in the real classroom. Interactive whiteboard software works equally well on a computer screen if it's projected over some kind of platform. This one, Zoom, or whatever it is you happen to be using. And it can make a very big difference. Going into e-publishing, being able to download things. We've seen that there is an increase in interest in that. As many of you know, that with our material, we provide kind of electronic versions of the books, and these have become incredibly popular. Flipped classroom, I'll talk about in more detail in just a few minutes. Certainly things like the use of video, we can now bring much more easily into the classroom. In terms of using things like YouTube videos, I mentioned earlier on, but there are other sources, even student-produced content, and I'll mention that as well. This idea of getting students to use video, etc. Okay, so there's a big thing earlier. Sorry, I'm just slightly distracted because I do keep looking at the chat as well to make sure everything's okay. And I mentioned again this idea of gamified content, but I agree gamified content tends to work at the lower levels rather than the higher levels, but making a kind of slight competition in conjunction with something like an LMS can be a way of getting your students much more involved. Yeah, and the next one, please. I should have a remote control that reaches all the way there. Okay, so let's have a think about ways of delivering the lesson. The next one, please, Julia. Thank you very much. Okay, so when we're thinking of lesson planning, obviously these are things that we are going to have to take into consideration. So you've got choose the right tools, and we've already mentioned that. And that doesn't have to stop. That's the important part of that message there, that teachers don't have to stop just because they found a couple of tools. Again, I mean, when I asked you guys earlier on to list the tools that you've been using, there was a flood of people listing tools that they use. And that's so encouraging, and they weren't all the same ones. So if you are looking for a tool, if there's, if you think you use something maybe enough already, if you think that there are other things that maybe you want to try, talk to your colleagues. That's the best, that's the best advice I can give you. They will know what works in the environment with which you are familiar. They will know what you can access. They will know what their students have been using effectively. So do talk to your fellow teachers about what their students can do. Prepare and practice in advance. A lesson for us all. Certainly, if you can, if you need to go online, maybe you could try things out with your colleagues. I know that with some of my friends and teachers, we have played online. We played kind of learning games with each other and tested things out before they've used them in the classroom. It was kind of fun as well. We had a meetup. We chatted a bit. We played some online games. They suggested, some suggestions came from other colleagues, and we tried them out. That's a very important thing, is to do that. Whatever you're doing, do make sure that what you're using is compatible, in the sense that in terms of the equipment available, it's possible. In terms of the age, it's suitable. In terms of what you're trying to teach, it makes sense. Not everything needs an app. Sometimes you can just be on camera explaining things, so don't always think you have to be rushing to get the latest app because someone mentioned it to you. There's a time and a place for everything. And sometimes just straight talking to your class, explaining things and taking questions may be the most suitable way of actually dealing with things. Prepare to troubleshoot. When things go wrong, as they can, when things go wrong, you just got to be prepared for it. Especially in the early stages, that's going to happen. But what you will find if you're working with specific apps and specific programs, and I'm sure many of you have found this already, that what you kind of get an intuitive sense of where to look or where to adjust whatever it is you're working with. Some of you are still having problems. I'm afraid I can't deal with the technical issues right now. But I do know my colleagues from EduStream are keeping an eye on the chat, and whatever advice they can give you, they will give. Reset your and your students' timeline. It is, these days, we're a little bit more flexible. And certainly, as I said, some places classrooms are shorter, the day is more spread out. It's not going to be the same as it was. Certainly, deadlines still matter. Make sure you're still very strict about that it doesn't get to be too laid back, but certainly there is a little bit more flexibility in the timeline that in comparison to what we were used to. Okay, Divya, next one, please. It's exciting because I can't see the slides before they come out. I do know what I'm doing, but don't remember every slide in order. So during the lesson, certainly there is a problem. Some people don't get things as easily online, so do try breaking things down into chunks and try and intersperse them with other kinds of activities. So if you've been doing an activity which took a while for them to focus on, maybe, I don't know, grammar or some reading or whatever it may happen to be, then maybe jumping into a YouTube video or a video supplied with the course. Certainly we supply a lot of videos with our courses, and they are usually available in the learning management system as well, or on the interactive whiteboard software. So you can kind of indicate chunks. So you talk, show a video, maybe play a game, something like this to really break it up, because the truth of the matter is, without that kind of interactivity, more casual interactivity that you can get in a classroom, it can get a little bit too much. Talking of generating interactivity, there are still ways of doing it, even though you're in a virtual environment. Obviously, your students can, using this kind of format, if the microphones were open in a classroom, your students can communicate with you. You maybe can allow them to put questions in the chat as you're doing your lesson as well. There are, in some platforms, I do know for Zoom definitely, I'm not sure for all platforms, that some of them do provide the idea of breakout rooms where you can divide learners into groups and they can work outside the kind of the full classroom, and they can go into little groups and have discussions and then come back into the main lesson. Certainly some of the apps that we've been talking about provide interactivity. Quite often what happens is that the learners use their phones as a kind of answer pad, and that can be really good fun, actually. I've had some great evenings with those. Do look at digitalized content as well. Don't be frightened of it. You don't have to deliver your lesson in the way you always did. As I've mentioned already, carpe diem, take the opportunities here. Gamified, we mentioned. And also, please try and enjoy it. You know, this is fun. It's a learning experience, and I know it was a big shock. But once you get into the swing of it and you have more tools at your fingertips, it can actually be fun. And having this kind of different interaction with our learners and being able to try different tools, it can be very, very good fun indeed. Didier, please, the next one. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so things to, this is going to be fun because there are no, there are no transitions in the slides the way we're doing it. Doesn't matter, I can talk you through it. This is why I wanted to do the screen share, but it doesn't matter. Do remember that when we're working online, there is an opportunity for there to be good feedback, and some of the old classroom instant feedback, and some of the old classroom techniques still matter. But do try to give feedback immediately. This is what ties in with what I was saying about breaking it down. So that if you've done an activity, if you've taught them something, try and use that kind of, at the end of that block of learning, try and get some feedback right there and then. Don't let it go on too far. There is a problem a little bit sometimes when learners are working online that they don't necessarily absorb things quickly, but doing some kind of activity whereby you round off the learning of that particular, whatever you're teaching, vocabulary, grammar, or whatever, is very helpful for learners to kind of signify that you've come to the end. Always provide a model that doesn't go away. That can be done in a number of different ways. Obviously, if you're doing listening, you can do listening online. If you're asking them to make a presentation, you can certainly use things like the TED Talks for those, just to model presentations, not necessarily the content. If you have the opportunity to use a whiteboard, this particular platform, for example, offers the opportunity to have a whiteboard there, or maybe you could use PowerPoint slides or whatever that you've prepared in advance to provide models for your learners. Keep monitoring them. If you're going to use breakout rooms as the host, as the person in charge, you can kind of pop into the breakout rooms. It's not like you don't have that opportunity. If your system does allow breakout rooms, it is great to be able to pop in and just make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And things like using videos, etc., can be great, and I'll talk about those in a couple of minutes when we look at doing presentation skills. What you have in front of you on the screen, and again, I apologize, it was supposed to be animated. This kind of model, if you have learners who are who are having difficulties, and this is true in the classroom, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just true in a virtual environment, but because of the possible added difficulties of the environment in which they're in, do go through things. One of the reasons I use examples here, and these are, if you're interested, these are from New Enterprise, is to break a conversation down. A lot of learners have problems with speaking, and again, not just virtually, because they're not quite sure of the rules of a particular conversation. If you're using an online thing, it's a good idea, instead of just talking about it, to actually have that on the screen. In the classroom, maybe they'd have it in their books, maybe you'd write it on the board. Don't just do it verbally. This kind of thing you have in front of you here is it's like a discourse map. And what we ask you to do here is to just ask questions, to brainstorm. What kind of things could we say here? What kind of things could we say here? The reason I have it there is because visually it's very helpful. So if you're going to try this kind of brainstorming, please remember in your online format that you have to have some kind of visual clues there. You know what, guys, even if it means just holding up a small whiteboard and writing on it, I don't care. But please remember the visual clues to help learners prepare for an activity. Don't let those disappear. If you are going to do pair work in things like breakout rooms or whatever, or even if you don't have the opportunity to do that, please don't forget to get feedback. So if you're working on like a pattern, a role play, or on just simple pattern practice, please remember to pick on learners. That's the wrong expression. To choose learners to give feedback in the classroom, even if they're not physically next to each other. There's a lot that they can still do. Don't lose sight of that just because you're online. Yeah, some of you are talking about the breakout rooms here. If you're not familiar with that, they really are very, very useful. I've been speaking at a number of conferences recently where they've used breakout rooms through Zoom. And you can time those. You can time limit them, so you can say you've got like a minute or 2 minutes. I have a slide coming up which will show you. So your learners have that kind of time pressure, and you have the classroom control there as well. But whatever happens, whenever we do something like a speaking activity, it still needs feeding back. You can either do it online in the classroom, or maybe you could get learners to make a video of it. Maybe they could meet online with a classmate, and they can kind of have a video through Skype or something like this of themselves doing the conversation and post it somewhere. Okay? And Dilya, if you would be kind enough, thank you very much. If you could go to the next slide, please. Ooh, so good. Yeah, this is the slide I mentioned. This is the kind of thing you get on Zoom. And forgive me, I know Zoom really well because that's a platform I've been using a lot. I'm sure other platforms do it, and I'm certainly not here to promote Zoom. But what you can see here is that you can even decide beforehand who goes in which group. So before you go on the lesson in your Zoom, you can program it. And then they can just automatically be separated out into rooms. And what you can find is that you can limit the time that they are there. So you can say, okay, you're going into the breakout rooms for 2 minutes, whatever. And in 2 minutes, whether they like it or not, they have to come back into the main room, in the main Zoom, and show what they've done. So it's kind of a useful thing. Okay, but as I said, not just Zoom. I said I'm familiar with it, but that's doesn't mean it's the only one. Certainly, using these devices that we've mentioned already, presentations, dialogues, debates can be done in front of the camera. There's no reason for those to disappear, but they can also, some of them, be done as recording. Writing assignments via email. A lot of people ask me about this. They say that, okay, if we're using a platform or whatever, how can we mark compositions? Well, the truth of the matter is it's going to have to be done by email. No computer is going to be able to mark compositions in the same way that you can. Just remember that you need them in an editable format. So your learners need to send them in Word or something equivalent, so that you can actually edit it. And please remember, when you're editing compositions, when you're marking them, to use the track changes function so that learners can actually see what you've changed. Certainly that's a function on Microsoft Word that I use a lot when I'm editing or whatever. Make sure you track changes. Oh, a little tip here. If you do use track changes to make corrections, before you save the document, turn track changes off, or before you copy it or whatever, because sometimes it assumes that you've accepted all the changes. That's when you finished. Turning it off won't make the corrections disappear. That was something I learned to cost by myself. We mentioned LMS feedback. Other things that people do, you can certainly have correspondence. Yeah, Kahoot, someone's just mentioned Kahoot's one of my favorites as well. You can have correspondence, not just with students in the same class, but within the same country or further afield. Obviously, that kind of thing has to be managed, and there has to be appropriate safeguards. We don't just let our learners communicate with everybody, certainly those under the legal majority age, and certainly their parents should be involved. But things like a closed class Facebook group, something like this, you can set up a group on Facebook. As teacher, you can monitor it and you can keep it closed. so that only your students can go in, and you can use that just to get kids to share experiences, everything in English. You can make announcements via that. You can do a number of things there that can be fun, that keep you in contact. Video meetings, like we're doing now, is a great way of doing it. Some of the apps that you mentioned, I also included in the presentation. I love Kahoot, and Flipgrid's nice as well. If you're not familiar with Flipgrid, Flipgrid allows your learners to post short video presentations on a subject that you've given them, which can then be seen by other people in the group. They're not available to everybody. They're only available to the people within the group, and students can watch each other's video presentations, maybe comment on them, maybe score them, who knows. Do try and keep your presence while you're not there. So what I mean, for example, is if there's a Facebook group for the class, post things yourself just a little bit as well. Doesn't have to be too revealing. It could be, maybe it should be educational, so maybe you found a good book or a good article online or a good video online you want to recommend to your learners. Try, for example, sending out group email if they have access to email, reminding them when things are due, this kind of thing. Don't allow it to be just when you're online, because they're not physically seeing you. Reminding them of your presence via these things can be very, very useful indeed. Okay, and the next one, please. As regards recording it, this is EduStream's property, so you would need to speak with EduStream about whether this is recorded or going to be available. Our colleagues there have organized this. This is my job is to chat with you guys. Anything else you'd need to speak to EduStream about, just because I saw some comments there in the chat. Now, just a couple of tips. We're going to zoom forward. During the lesson, now you noticed that I had a bit of a problem with my cameras at the beginning. I'm still not sure what that is. But certainly, please remember when you're using a camera to look into it. One of you very kindly commented earlier on that I seem to be looking at the wrong camera. I'm still not sure if I'm looking at the right one, but so far so good. So do try to remember, if you've got the screen in front of you, you're definitely going to look at it. There's no denying that. But please remember, eye contact is with the camera and not with the screen. Okay, so please do and try and remember that. Also, remember lighting. Now, many of you may have problems with lighting. Just to let you into a little secret, my desk, where I'm speaking to you from now, is in kind of the hall area of my apartment. And behind the camera is a wall. And because lighting is not particularly good here, because my light is central, what I did, this is a bit embarrassing, I have stuck tin foil, aluminium foil, just the stuff we use for cooking, I have stuck on the wall behind my computer screen, so that what it does is it reflects the light back into my face. Because if I move my light here, you can see. You don't really have to invest, there we go, you don't have to invest in lights or anything like that. If you're against a wall, it's an idea I've learned because I also do some filming work, etc. Just put something reflective. A mirror's not a good idea, it's too hard. But I use aluminium foil being stuck on the wall with sellotape behind my screen to bounce some of the ambient light back. And I also have a little LED light, which I pointed at the foil and it sends the light back. So do look into lighting. As I said, it doesn't have to be an expensive option. Trust me, mine's very cheap. Check your screen presence. Do keep an eye on what's on the screen. As I said, today we had difficulties because what I can see of me is not necessarily what you guys were seeing. So this is why I relied on you for feedback. Some of you mentioned that your students don't switch on cameras. Now, I don't know if that's a thing they're not supposed to do or it's a thing they don't want to do. You'd have to clarify that for me. I made a life hack. Thank you so much. Many of the countries with which we work, the students are supposed to turn on their cameras. Now, I don't know if that's a legal requirement where you live. I'm not sure. But certainly, it is useful for your learners to have cameras on. If your learners are younger, and this is something you might need to communicate to their parents about, please, I know a lot of learners are very sensitive about how they look on camera. This is the generation that does selfies every 5 seconds. So maybe there's that issue there as well. But if they were in the classroom, you could see them. I see no reason why, if they're working virtually, their camera should be turned off. If you like the foil thing, when we finish, I may turn my camera around and you can actually see what I'm talking about. So, because it is a useful thing. Communicate with body language. When I'm talking, as again today, I'm not quite sure where my frame is, but certainly as I talk, I do try to look at the camera. I still use hand gestures. I sit forward in my chair. I don't slouch back in it. This would be me there. I'm actually sitting forward, leaning forward, gives a certain amount of energy, thinking of posture. Obviously, the frame should be as close to your face as possible, but do think about that. Don't slouch too much. Keep an energetic attitude. Do use your hands. Remember, if you want to use your hands, they should be near your face, because that's where the frame is. Doing hand gestures down here is useless. If I want to make a gesture, I bring my hands up, because I know that I hope, my face is on camera. Okay. Just a word as well, do make sure about your background. Do have a look at the frame. I'm looking at a different camera again. Well, as I said, I'm not sure which camera is being used, guys. So it's all very weird today, because I'm supposed to be using one camera according to this, but it seems to be using another camera. And I'm just going to look at both cameras. There we go. I'm just going to keep looking at both cameras, and hopefully that will help out, because I programmed it to use my camera and it's not doing it. So, okay. I'm just going to keep turning my head to both cameras and whatever. Okay, thank you very much, guys, from EduStream here. I did say earlier on that today there's a slight difference. Normally I know which camera I'm using. Before I was looking at this one and someone told me it looked wrong, and then I looked at that one. I give up. So anyway, I'm just going to keep doing this. This one is good. Yeah? The one on my left is fine. Okay, for some reason it's not using the one I want. I wonder if I did that. I mean, because I do actually have my other camera there, and when I try to switch to it, it doesn't use it at all. So anyway, I don't know why that is. It wants to use my computer camera, so I'm just gonna, it'll turn back in a second. Don't worry about it. Give me a second. Why is it doing that now? I shouldn't have changed. You see, you shouldn't play with things, really. We shouldn't play with things in the middle of a presentation. Okay, so people say my camera to my left is the right one. I know you need eye contact, but I don't know which camera to choose, because this thing is not going back into that. Thank you very much. What matters now is important. I'm just going to forget that. As I said, usually I do know. Cool, now again, wrong. Okay, I'm going to look this way. Is that the right way? I'm looking to my left. Okay, thank you. Again, it's telling me it's using one camera and it's using the other one. Anyway, let's not worry about that. I'm going to do that. So the only problem is I have to keep looking to my right, because that's where the presentation is. So don't do what I'm doing, do what I say, okay? Now, the next thing we have to look at is things like posture. We mentioned, okay, can we go on to the next slide, Divya, please? Because this has been a long one on that. Okay, so what I can do is then, if it's over here, I'm just going to move it over here. All right. Could you go back one? There we go. Thank you. Minimize distractions. I tried, because I thought I was using a different screen, different camera. So forgive me. I try very much just to keep it on my face and keep the frame tight. At the moment, I really don't know what you're seeing. You could be seeing my coffee cup. I hope not. I'm just going to move things away there. Luckily, I'm nicely dressed. Okay. Sometimes take yourself off screen. And for example, using interactive whiteboard software, things like this, vary what you have on the screen. That's very important as well. So, what is that? Oh, it is the camera. Okay. Yeah, everything's good. Try to keep yourself looking smart. I know it's very easy when we work online to kind of relax and not worry about getting dressed up so much. But we do send a message that we need to be, you know, if we're not looking smart, how can we expect our learners to do the same things? I'm not saying wear a suit and tie. I'm not saying, you know, wear your best whatever. But as I said here, for example, I like to wear a shirt when I'm doing presentations. I make sure that I'm looking neat and tidy for you guys. And do look at the background. Now, I'm hopeful, as I said, that nothing in my background is distracting. As I said, I was expecting to use a different angle, but there you go, needs must. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is just a quick example of the interactive whiteboard software. This one's taken from Enterprise. Now, I had hoped to show you that live, but I don't think that's going to happen today, simply because we found it difficult to screen share today. So I've got this here anyway. Just please remember that when you have things like interactive whiteboard software, you don't need a special board. You don't need to do anything other than put it in your computer. It's best if you load it onto your computer. That would make more sense so that you can run it without the CD running, because sometimes the CD running is a little bit problematic. Interactive whiteboard software, switching between video of you and then video of the interactive whiteboard software can be a great way of breaking things up. Do remember that in the interactive whiteboard software, just to let you know a little bit about our interactive whiteboard software, it includes audio, video, anything that you might want to show your learners from the course book will be included in the interactive whiteboard software. So please do have a look at that. If you are using our material and you haven't a chance to try it out, please do get in touch with our guys at EduStream to ask them about that. Just remember, please, technical tip, if you're using interactive whiteboard software or video or anything over a platform, please check how to share the sound. I do know in Zoom that when you go to shared screen, there's an option for sharing the sound. Other platforms, I think Teams does it as well. So please remember, if you're using something like interactive whiteboard software, to do that then, okay? It's a problem some people face. And if you don't know where it is, Google it. Next one, please, Dillian, because I've got my eye on the time as well. So go to the next one, please, because I'll talk about this as we go through. And I'm just going to zoom through some of these ideas because we've got about 12 minutes left. We should be fine. Okay. During a lesson, someone says it's necessary to make a physical education pause. Yeah, I think if you, well, it depends on the time of your lesson. If you have like a 50-minute lesson, 45-minute lesson, giving them a couple of minutes just to stretch or whatever, it depends how long your hour is. But please remember to keep it under control. Okay, it's okay to miss normal. It's okay that we found things to be a little bit difficult at first. It's okay that some of us are still working out how all these things work. It's perfectly okay. Don't be hard on yourselves about this. It's a learning curve for teachers as much as it is for students. So please, please, please remember that this is still a learning experience, and we, as a profession, teachers really did the best they possibly could, and they're still looking into it. So take credit for that. Next one, please, Dilly. Okay. Expect a lot of trial and error. It's going to happen. You can see it happening real time. Share experience, we've mentioned. Emphasize your presence. I'm just rounding some ideas up here we talked about already because we're coming towards the end. Next one, please, Divya, because I want to get to the flipped learning slides as fast as I can. I've mentioned all of these things. Yes, we've talked about those. All right. Could you just go through to the, because this is just a summary of some of the things we've talked about. Could you flip through till it goes to flipped classroom? Because this is for a different, slightly different version. Keep going. There we go. Thank you very much, Delia. You're very, very kind. Okay, one of the things I wanted to talk about to finish off is this idea of flipping the classroom. And if you could go to the next slide for me, please, Delia, I want to just show what I mean. Okay, what you have in front of you on the screen, by the way, are screenshots taken from our learning management system. We have Learning LMS for all our material that comes out, and it gives students access to a digital version of the book. Now, what do we mean by flipped classroom? What we essentially are talking about is making sure that the time-consuming body of work that we have should be done outside the classroom. So, for example, if we're doing a reading comprehension, and the reason I choose reading comprehension is because that tends to be time-consuming in the class for the actual act of reading the text. And this is true at all levels, whether you're teaching lower levels, whether you're teaching university level. It doesn't make much sense to have learners online sitting silently reading a text. So what we suggest is that we kind of turn things around a bit. Now, one of the advantages of using something like an LMS is that there is kind of autocorrect function. Learners can do an activity and then they can check their score. Now, I'm not going into massive details now, but when they check their score, that information is sent back to the platform so that the teacher actually has access to how well or not the learners have done. So what you can do if you're using something like an LMS is give them stuff to do before the lesson. So for example, even a listening activity, a kind of warm-up listening, you can do before the lesson. This one, by the way, is a listening activity that learners can do at home, so you don't have to spend time in your classroom doing that. If you could go to the next one, Didier, because I want to make sure we have time for Vec as well. Okay, the text itself, they can read at home. They've done an introduction. You've had a chat with them before. They can do the text at home. If you go to the next one, it shows where they can answer the questions. Could you flick to the next one, please? Thank you so much. This would be the questions underneath that text. And when you can just see there's the check button. It's on the bottom right-hand corner. You can see it says check. So the learners can read the text, answer the questions, and then see what they got right. This means you don't have to do that in the classroom, which is time consuming. They can see what they got right or wrong. And very importantly, if you're using an LMS, you can see what they got right or wrong. Yeah, this is a very interesting and useful point to make, that they can get the scores themselves, and if they want, they can try again. But it's very important to note that you can see every attempt they made. Could you go to the next slide, please, for me, Julia? Okay. Yeah, one of the other things that the software, for example, our LMS includes, I can only speak about ours, it includes things like a glossary. So if they're doing reading comprehension, they have a glossary included, but also they can use things like Google Translate if they want to look up some of the words, etc. That's okay as well. Next one, please. Okay, now what we would suggest you leave the classroom time for is very simply doing the interactive stuff. So for example, having the discussion activities, having the speaking activities. This can be done in the classroom, and we think that's very important. Please go to the next one. Okay, and this again, this is a project-based activity. This is what we can discuss with the students. They can give feedback online or through the videos we've mentioned. This is time better spent in the classroom than doing all the vocabulary activities, etc., which essentially aren't that interactive in terms of student and teacher interacting. Next one, please, Dean. Public speaking skills as well. If you're going to do presentation work, it's probably a good idea to use those on video to get them to do a presentation and post a video on something like Flipgrid or the Facebook page, whatever it is you have. And the next one, please. Remember, this is all from our LMS platform. This is from Career Paths, which is for vocational language learning. The same thing applies. Get learners to do the time-consuming stuff beforehand. Next one, please, David. And then when you come into the classroom, you can actually focus on the more interactive stuff. And of course, dealing with questions that students have, difficulties they faced when doing those tasks. And the next one, please. Okay, so you can focus on things like the speaking and guiding them through. Flip to the next one, please. This is just list some of the benefits of doing this kind of flipped idea. It does allow learners to work at their own pace, is what I mentioned. So if they take longer reading, they're not holding up the rest of the class. If they can read very quickly, they're not waiting for the rest of the class. They can come back into the lesson with targeted questions. I tried to get question 3 correct 4 times, and I still can't find it. Can you help me? So you get very targeted feedback from your learners when they talk about the problems they faced. Okay, they will use other resources. That's okay. But they're more engaged because it's something they can actually handle. They're not going to sit in the classroom daydreaming. This is something they can actually handle. They have tools available. They can take slightly longer with it. Okay, and it's a better use of online time when it's targeted. I'm not going to have time for that now. If I do, I'll come back to it. Could you flip through to VEC for me, please? Yeah, thank you so much. Just for those of you teaching at vocational level, forgive me, this is an advertising thing I wanted to mention just before we kind of bring this thing to a close. Do remember that we provide examinations for English for specific purposes. Sorry, my brain got stuck. Could you flick to the next one for me, Lydia? Thank you. We have, in cooperation with the University of Greenwich, for those of you who are teaching maybe at vocational level, just a reminder that we have these vocational exams available. There are basically 2 certificates that we provide. One is kind of a certificate of participation, that students have followed at least 48 hours of work in the ESP there. The other is an examination certificate. And this is done online. If you want more information about this, please do contact our colleagues at EduStream to give you more information about that. It's just a thing we're launching. We thought some of you might be interested in, and it is something that is rather unique, and we wanted to let you know about. Final advertising point, some of the other examples that I took are from the new version of Enterprise called New Enterprise, which goes from A1 to B2. It's a new version of everybody's favorite Enterprise, and if you are interested in that as well, please contact our colleagues at EduStream. Now, oh, don't worry about this, Divya, just go to the end, because I just want to ask my final question now, if you'd be so kind. Thank you. The final question I want to ask you, because we've got just a couple of minutes, when, God willing, everything goes back to normal, and when we can get back into our classrooms, what do you think? Are you going to go back to just doing everything the way you used to do it? Or are you going to try and incorporate some of the things you've learned in this kind of period when you go back into the classroom? What do you think you're going to do? Do you think you're going to go back to old teaching, or you're going to try and incorporate new things that you've learned in the stuff that you do? No one's answering the question. Everyone's disappearing. Okay. I'll put it as a rhetorical question then, second option. Yeah. Do think about that. When we go back into the classrooms, when we have full-time contact time with our students, there is going to be a temptation just to go back to the way we always did things. And I think that would be a shame. What we'd be looking at, I hope, is ways of incorporating all the stuff that we've been doing for years and we've been doing well with some of the newer stuff that we've learned. It would be a shame if this opportunity, which came to us for horrible causes, I use the word opportunity and I understand the effect of that, but in this crisis, this horrible crisis that we faced, it has caused us to look at things again. It has caused us to think about how we do things. And I do think it's important that when we go back into the classroom, we do think about ways of taking those lessons with us, no matter what the cause for us learning those lessons in the first place. I'm going to stop now because my time is up. I shall thank you all so much for your attendance. I know you guys are very, very busy. I'm sorry about the slight technical hitches that we had, but we soldiered on and you were very patient. And I am very, very grateful for your patience and for your goodwill. Just guys, stay very, very well. Stay incredibly safe. Look after yourselves. And who knows, God willing, we should maybe have the chance to meet up face-to-face in the not-so-distant future. And thank you to my wonderful colleagues at EduStream for clicking for me so effectively and looking after me during the presentation. I'm very, very grateful for your help. You've been super. Thanks, everybody, and I shall wish you a good evening and a good rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, for your amazing presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I was trying not to interrupt.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. The information was very useful. We can read a lot of thanks here in the messenger.
People are kind. Thank you very much.
I think we will say goodbye to Steve, and please others stay here. I promise you to run a contest.
Okay, Didier, I'm going to sign off. So I shall thank you very much and wish you all well. Bye-bye for now, Didier.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so I'm going to show my number again. Please take your time and write down it. Oh. Okay, let's do it this way. I can't see it here. Now I'm going to ask 3 questions concerning our company. The one who, I think I will text my number. Please send text message, not WhatsApp, not emails, not messages here. It's supposed to be text message. Here we go. We prepared beautiful gifts for you. And the first, if I'm not mistaken, 10 people who got the right answer. I can't see my message. Can you see? Yep, we got it. Okay, so the questions are: when was Express Publishing established? That is first. How many digibooks does Express Publishing have? And the last one, which university was mentioned in vocational English examination? Again, when was Express Publishing established or founded? How many digibooks does it have? And which university mentioned in vocational English examination? Well, no need to write here. Please send me the text message to the phone. Please, dear guests, dear teachers, no need to write here. Yeah, you're just making some people's life easier. Really, was it Oxford University? Yes, if you've answered, you can leave the chat. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining our webinar. I hope you got a lot of useful information. And in 2 days, we will inform you who got the right answers. And by the end of the week, I hope you will receive your certificates. We will send them to your emails. Well, my questions were, when was Express Publishing established? How many digibooks does it have? And which university mentioned during the Steve's presentation in vocational English examination? Please take your time. I got your emails here in this platform. Since I downloaded, I will send your certificates. Well, Natalia is here, but my name is Dilia. Okay, we will wait for your answers. That's all for now. Have a nice evening and bye-bye. I can see my colleagues here. Yeah, we will try to send the presentation with your certificate. Bye-bye. Thank you very much too.